50 is not the beginning of decline. 50 is the moment when the decisions you make determine which trajectory you're on for the rest of your life. The women I work with who commit to this in their 50s are extraordinary in their 60s, not because they cheated biology, but because they worked with it. They worked with what their body needed at exactly the right time. Now, the window is open. The question is whether you want to walk through it, whether it matters to you.
Welcome to Health Decoded, your number one source for real health information, with your hosts, Dr. Alessi and Matt Tack.
Most people don't wake up one day and say, today I'm going to have gut issues. It starts quietly. Bloating becomes normal. Fatigue gets blamed on stress. Brain fog, skin issues, food reactions. These are just part of life, right? Until one day you realize you don't feel like you anymore. And here's the truth most people never hear. Gut issues are not random, and they're rarely solved with probiotics, antacids, or elimination diets alone. That's why I created our 6R Gut Healing Framework, a proven step-by-step system designed to uncover why your gut is inflamed and what it actually needs to heal, based on the exact system I used to heal my gut. In my free on-demand webinar, you'll learn why gut symptoms persist even when labs look normal, the 6 phases required for real gut repair, how testing, nutrition, and targeted protocols work together, and why most people fail, not because they didn't try, but because they never had a real plan. If you're tired of guessing, Googling, and spinning your wheels, this webinar is your next step. Visit the link in the show notes to watch the 6R Gut webinar now. And as a listener of the Health Decoded podcast, you'll receive an exclusive offer at the end, only available through this webinar. Your gut isn't broken. It just needs a plan. Hey, welcome back. I want to start this final episode of this mini-series with a different kind of patient story than what we've heard in the last few. Now, this isn't a story about someone who was sick. It's not a story about someone who had been failed by the system. This is really more a story about what's possible on the other side. Now, for just sake of not using names, I'll call this patient Diane. She came to Ascend 3 years ago, back when we were Alessi Functional Health. She was 54 years old. She wasn't in crisis. She was, by what she would have described, managing fine, running her consulting firm, staying active, eating well. But she had started to notice what she would call, or what most would call, like a ceiling. She was bumping up against a limit she couldn't quite push through. Energy that was good, not great. Focus that was reliable, but no real sharpness or get-to-itness. Her body responded to training, but not the way it once had. She was very much maintaining. And she felt like she had almost like a capacity that she was not able to access. And so she came to us not because something was wrong. She came because she wanted to know, what did it actually look like to be healthy at 54? She wasn't quite sure. And what she had gotten from her primary care docs and other friends, family, it didn't fit what she was wanting. So we did a complete workup. We found the limitations. Insulin resistance was impacting her cellular energy. She had a cortisol curve that was compressed, meaning she wasn't getting that morning boost, which, should drive your clarity, your motivation. For a female, she had testosterone actually at the low end of the reference. Technically would have been normal to any other doc who's just, looking at green and red. But, that can impact her level of activity and the demands she had as a professional as well. And she had a gut that was functional, but wasn't optimized. And so she wasn't getting the most out of her system. And so what we did was pretty cool. We put together a protocol for her over 6 months. We addressed each of those pieces in a specific sequence. We focused on metabolic optimization, cortisol rhythm support through targeted things like adaptogens and lifestyle restructuring, bioidentical testosterone, which you should never be too good for, right? These are bioidentical hormones that if your body is not producing them, you can use as supplementary to get back to a state of normal or even optimal, actually. And then we also focused on gut healing and microbiome enrichment. At 6 months, I remember her telling me something, and it was something
that I think about actually a lot. And when I meet other patients like her, she said, I don't feel like I did at 40. I feel more like I did at 30, but smarter. And it wasn't just luck. It wasn't just her genetics. That's actually what happens when you stop accepting a ceiling and you start removing what's really creating the limits in the first place. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. I'm going to break down some major things, what thriving actually should look like, not as a concept, but clinically as a reality, reversing your bioidentical age, reversing your age from the inside, and what it takes to actually get there. Now, welcome to episode 4, the final episode of this mini-series I put together. I'm Dr. Alessi. I'm the founder and clinic director at Ascend Functional Health. Over the past 3 weeks, we've covered a lot of ground with this type of topic. And the reason I broke it up is because there's a lot of pieces that go into thriving or optimizing one's health and really focusing on that. We talked about the difference between not being sick and actually performing at your potential. We talked about the economics of healthcare and the opportunity cost of not taking action. We broke down clinically why the most common approaches to health optimization produce partial or temporary results. And if you followed along for all 4 episodes, you now have a fundamentally different framework for thinking about your health than what most people are operating from. And so today, I want to close the loop. I want to wrap everything up and talk about what the destination actually looks like. What does it mean? Specifically, biologically, and practically, to thrive in your 50s, 60s, and beyond. What are we actually building toward? And what is the path from here? What does it look like? And so let's get into it. And so first, we need to redefine the destination. So before we talk about how to get somewhere, we need to agree where we're going. Because I think most people have a fundamentally impoverished picture of what health in their 50s and 60s can actually look like. The cultural narrative around midlife, particularly for women, is one of like a grateful acceptance. You're slowing down, your body's changing, you're going to hold more weight, you're going to feel more puffy. This is the beginning of the aging arc. You just manage what you can, accept what you can't, and adjust your expectations accordingly, I guess. And I'll just straight up reject that narrative, and that because that's what it is. It's a narrative. Not because aging isn't real. It is. Time's going to keep passing. Biological aging involves real processes, right? Our telomeres, they shorten. Mitochondrial decline. We have shifts in hormones. That's just going to happen. Changes in our cellular repair capacity. These aren't myths, but there's an enormous difference between the biological rate of aging, which is partly genetic, partly environmental, and the rate of functional decline, which is largely driven by factors that we can identify and address. And so the research on longevity and health span, the years of life spent in good health, that is, not just living, it's unambiguous on this. The primary drivers of functional decline in midlife are not just time-based. They are chronic inflammation, hormone dysregulation, metabolic dysfunction, dysbiotic gut systems, and one that should come as no shock, sedentary behavior. And so every single one of those factors is actually measurable and even better, modifiable. So what does thriving actually look like? Well, let's get into it. Let's create that picture now. It looks like waking up in the morning feeling rested and alert without needing an alarm or a cup of coffee to become a functional human being. It looks like a body composition that reflects your effort, where you can see the muscles on your body. Your muscle mass is maintained and actually increasing. Fat doesn't accumulate despite a normal diet. It looks like cognitive sharpness that holds throughout the day, not crashing in the afternoon, not brain foggy, not struggling to remember things or pull out words. It looks like a stable mood, a baseline emotional experience that is genuinely good rather than flat or having to force effort. It looks like a libido that is present and normal, joints that move without pain or stiffness, metabolic biomarkers that are not just normal, but optimal, insulin sensitive, inflammatory markers low, lipid profiles that are balanced, that reflect operating biology. And now this isn't just a fantasy. It's definitely not normal nowadays, but this is what the patients that I work with who are committed to comprehensive optimization, this is what they look like at 12, 18, 24 months of work. And so that ceiling that Diane had described, it can come off. right? And that is the destination, is to open it to the sky's the limit metaphor. And so let's talk about some of those longevity biomarkers that actually matter. And let's get into it, because what we actually measure when we're measuring for optimizing longevity and performance, it's not just looking for the absence of disease. There are things that we can structurally focus on. And so number one, fasting insulin and what we call an HOMA-IR score. This is a measure of insulin resistance. And so insulin resistance is arguably the single most important driver of accelerated aging and chronic disease. And it's almost never measured in standard workups. So most physicians will measure your fasting glucose, but glucose stays normal until insulin resistance is pretty advanced, because the body can compensate by flooding the system with insulin. By the time your glucose is elevated, your insulin, which has also often been elevated for years, fasting insulin and the HOMA-IR index, which is, by the way, a calculation of insulin resistance from your fasting glucose and insulin together. So it's an algorithmic score. It gives us an earlier and more accurate picture. The number of times that I've seen someone come in, we run blood work, and they've got a jack through the ceiling HOMA-IR score, but standard glucose and insulin are like normal, or maybe like high normal, would have been just dismissed by any other doc. I catch that and I say, okay, your body's trending toward an insulin resistant state. How do we get ahead of this now? What things can we change to prevent that? And so many patients with normal glucose are going to be running at a 15 or a 20, but ideally we want to be below an 8 for a fasting insulin. Now, the next two markers, and these go basically hand in hand with the ones we just talked about, is inflammatory markers, and particularly HSCRP. HSCRP is high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It measures systemic inflammation. That's basically inflammation throughout the body. And so elevated inflammation is the common thread running through cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and cognitive decline, autoimmunity, and accelerated cellular aging. And an optimal HSCRP is below 0.5. We see this in the tens sometimes on patients, and I'm like, how are you even functioning at this point? We also look at things like homocysteine, which is an amino acid that, when it's elevated, indicates an impaired methylation and is independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease and cognitive decline in particular. Some patients, we're going to look at like an IL-6 and other cytokines to get more of a granular inflammatory picture. The next thing we look at, full thyroid and hormone panels. And we've covered this in the last few episodes, but just in context of longevity, thyroid hormone is one of the master regulators of your metabolism, of your cellular energy production, and your cognitive function. So having optimal free T3, not just normal, but optimal, is associated with better body composition, better cardiovascular function, and significantly better cognitive performance as we age. Similarly, optimizing estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, especially in postmenopausal women, is not just about symptom relief. Estrogen is neuroprotective and cardioprotective. Testosterone is critical for maintaining muscle mass and bone density, cognitive function. That's not just for vanity. These are longevity-focused interventions with substantial research actually supporting the role in health span. The next thing that we got to see is muscle mass, and particularly using like a DEXA scan to screen for that. Muscle mass is recognized as one of the most powerful longevity biomarkers that we have. Lean muscle mass can predict all-cause mortality more reliably than many traditional risk factors. It's the primary driver of insulin sensitivity. The more muscle you have, the more your body can utilize and uptake sugar. It determines your metabolic rate. It protects your bone density. It reduces fracture risk and fall risk. And it's the reservoir of amino acids, which your body uses for immune function, tissue repair. And so we use a DEXA scan, which we actually do in-house at Ascend, to give us a precise picture of your lean mass, your fat mass, your visceral fat, which is around your organs, the most metabolically dangerous fat, and bone density. And together, these tell us a great deal about your metabolic trajectory. And then the last two things we're going to get into, gut microbiome health and nutrients. The microbiome, as I've talked about extensively, not only in this series, but in this podcast in general, because it's just such a focus of ours, it's not just a digestive thing. it's a longevity issue. And microbiome diversity declines with age and is strongly associated with increased inflammation, immune dysfunction, cognitive decline. They show that the centenarian populations, that's these populations where they have the most amount of people who live to age 100 and beyond with good health, they consistently show unusually diverse and robust microbiomes. And this isn't a coincidence. Optimizing gut health isn't just about digestion, it's a longevity strategy. And the people in these populations are often eating diverse. They're getting food from different places and they're having these more robust diets. They're not just eating the same thing over and over again to have more of a diverse microbiome. The next thing, nutrient status. Magnesium, vitamin D, zinc, B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids. These are the raw materials that run the enzymatic processes, the mitochondrial energy production, the cellular repair on how your body and how well your biology functions. Most people are deficient in multiple of these, and they have no idea because they've never measured them, and it doesn't get measured on a standard panel. And so they're taking a bunch of vitamins. They don't know which ones they actually need. Are they getting enough? Do they have genetic predispositions or SMPs that are preventing them from utilizing said vitamins? And so being able to know these things, because optimizing your nutrient status is, it's not the sexy thing, right? But it's profoundly impactful on your longevity as well. Now, let's get into beyond that, some of the more precise tools that we can use for optimization. And I want to spend some time on this because these are like more of the therapeutic tools that we use when someone gets to that optimization phase. And just really quickly to backtrack, if you've not been around for long enough or heard how we kind of operate or our approach to things, there's phases of how you do stuff. You wouldn't just go start fixing the alignment of your car without checking if the tires or the wheels or the gears, right? Everything has to go in sequence. And so we always focus on number one is the repair phase. What things do we need to fix? Does the gut need to be repaired? Is there inflammation? Do we need to replace a microbiome that's unhealthy? Then we get into more of a corrective phase, right? Where we start fill in the gaps, fixing the nutrient deficiencies, correcting the inflammatory breakdowns, repairing cellular energy, mitochondrial function. Then the fun part is the optimization phase. And now when someone gets into that optimization phase is where we can really use some cool things to pull levers and really make some big impactful changes. Although when someone's sick and they go through repair and corrective phase, they're going to feel night and day different. That's majorly impactful as well. This is more of like the fun stuff that people want to get to. But again, you have to get there. You have to earn it. You have to get there in the right time. And so I want to spend some time on this because there's a lot of confusion, I think, and misinformation around some of these things. And I think it's important to give you clear and honest picture, just again, from more of a functional perspective. So number one, bioidentical hormone replacement. People call it HRT. We call it HOT because we're not just trying to replace what's missing. We're trying to optimize the hormones themselves. And so, myself, I'll be a bit transparent here. I'm only 34, but 2 years ago, was dealing with the brain fogginess. I think a bit of the burnout as an entrepreneur and father and all these things. And upon running my testosterone, noticed it was about mid 600s, which wouldn't be low. It's not low. Is it optimal? No. And so I decided for myself that it made sense to utilize TRT or TOT and not just replace the deficient hormone because it wasn't, but optimize it to a level where my body is operating at a high level. I have energy throughout the entire day. I sleep amazing. I recover amazing. My brain is sharp, all these things. And so doing that in a specific and safe way made sense for me. And so, HRT uses hormones that are molecularly identical to the one that your body produces, as opposed to synthetic hormones, which structurally they're different and they can actually carry a different risk profile. So the decades of fear around hormone therapy have primarily been driven by the Women's Health Initiative study, which used synthetic conjugated estrogen and synthetic progestins, which are not bioidentical hormones. And so there was elevated risks that haven't been replicated with bioidentical protocols, especially when they're administered appropriately. And so using correctly, meaning at physiologic dose with appropriate monitoring, frequent blood work, starts within a reasonable window of like a menopause onset. So bioidentical estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, these are among the most powerful longevity tools that we have available. They're going to protect bone. They protect your cardiovascular system. They're neuroprotective. They maintain muscle. They build muscle. They dramatically improve quality of life. And we always monitor patients who are on HOT with regular labs, adjusting them based on data, building lifestyle and fundamental protocols around that, right? Because you're not going to out supplement or out hormone a crappy lifestyle. And so it's very much not a set it and forget it prescription. It's a precision intervention. And unfortunately, what we see is most docs are going to put you on a hormone and say, come back in 6 months to a year. There's way too much set it and forget it mentality there that makes people worse often. Maybe they took too much, maybe too little, right? The next thing that I want to talk about are peptides. These are by far one of the more popular things that are going around nowadays. Everyone's asking about peptides. What are peptides? How do I get them? Peptides are short chains of amino acids, they work as signaling molecules that the body uses to regulate specific biological processes. As we age, the production of many of these signaling molecules declines. So peptide therapy uses targeted peptides to restore or enhance specific functions. One of the most popular, BPC 157, it's one of the most studied. It accelerates tissue repair, reduces inflammation, profound for gut healing, and then paired with TB500 to promote systemic healing and recovery. Another one that I love is CJC 1295, paired with ipamorelin. These work together to support natural growth hormone pulsation, which is great for improving sleep, body composition, recovery, cellular repair, without the risks of using like an exogenous growth hormone administration, because the peptide goes in and it actually turns on the cellular signals to tell your body to produce more growth hormone on its own versus giving it exogenous growth hormone, which can actually suppress your natural production. Growth hormone naturally declines as we age as well. And so this is a great support for longevity. And then GHK copper supports collagen synthesis. It's been shown to have anti-inflammatory and tissue regenerative effects, great for skin health, gut health, joint health, all of it. And these aren't experimental. It's not like some new found thing. Peptides have been around forever, and they're used by some of the most sophisticated longevity and sports medicine clinicians in the world. They're precision tools, though, and they have a specific purpose. And so they have to be used with a comprehensive protocol. It's not some standalone intervention. You don't just try it, right? Just give it a shot, which a lot of people do. And the truth is, if your body is not metabolically healthy, if your body's inflamed, if you have poor gut health or function, you're not going to get much out of a peptide. You might as well save your money and just focus on the fundamentals at that point. Now, the next piece is metabolic and mitochondrial support. And the mitochondria is by far one of the most important things that we can focus on for longevity. It's the energy producing organelles that are inside your cells. And these are central to aging. Mitochondrial efficiency naturally declines with age, driving fatigue, cognitive decline, metabolic slowdown that we associate with just getting older. But targeted support is available. You can use specific nutrients, things like CoQ10, NAD, precursors of NAD like NMN or NR, alpha lipoic acid. In some cases, even like a low dose rapamycin or even metformin has been used in longevity contexts. Now, again, these are not things you just experiment with or try, and I'm not recommending that. Obviously, I'm a doctor and I've been doing this for a long time. I recommend working with a professional who understands these types of things because they can meaningfully support mitochondrial function and cellular energy production as well. Then advanced nutrition and lifestyle. And, I think I want to be clear that these tools that we just touched on are not a substitute for the fundamentals. They amplify them. Sleep, resistance training, stress physiology management, time-restricted eating may be calibrated to your individual metabolic status. These are non-negotiables for any serious longevity protocol. Then the advanced therapeutics work best when the foundation is built. And so what does this actually look like, as a patient, right? I just said a bunch of cool sciencey stuff, but as a patient, what is that journey, right? What could you expect? And so let me give you a clear picture of what that looks like, especially I can't talk towards other clinics or other doctors, but what we do at Ascend and how we've helped so many people, from the initial consultation to optimization, because there's some ambiguity of what functional medicine can make people uncertain, right, about what they're actually signing up for. And so always a comprehensive intake and consultation, deep dive into your health history, medications, not just what's been diagnosed, but what you've experienced, what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Setting some concrete goals, not just I want to feel better, but where do you want to be in your health in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? You want to be able to run and jump and play with your grandkids, right? These are fantastic goals. We then build a complete, comprehensive laboratory picture. Depending on your history, your presentation, this will include comprehensive panels like I've described. Full thyroid, complete hormones, metabolic, gut, microbiome assessment, micronutrient status, inflammatory markers. We're not guessing at your biology, we're mapping it. And from that map, we build a protocol that's specific to you, not just some generic supplement stack, right? Not just some, hey, try this, take all this stuff. And it's not even a diet from a template. It's all personalized to your goals. And so it's sequenced, and we prioritize the root causes in the right order, because we're not going to just start putting somebody on hormones or peptides if their gut's a mess. We're not going to start even addressing someone's gut if their metabolism and liver aren't working, right? We have to do things appropriately. And so we follow up regularly with people, monthly. We actually check in weekly with patients. We utilize specific technology to be able to kind of get feedback on a weekly basis. Then we retest things regularly. We adjust, we track, not just how you feel, although that matters, the subjective piece matters, you want to feel better, but how are your biomarkers shifting and moving? Are they trending toward optimal? Are we getting the outcomes we plan for? And this tells us how your body is actually able to respond to the procedure, the protocols, I should say. Data-driven medicine is really what we're all about. Most patients who commit to the process are going to feel meaningfully different within the first 60 days, if not the 90 days. Significant biomarker improvement usually shows at month 4 to 6. And then that optimization phase where we're building, future rather than repairing things. It usually becomes a primary mode of care somewhere in the 6 to 12 month range, depending on where someone starts, of course. Now, Diane, who we talked about at the start, she's now what we would call in the optimization phase. She's an optimization patient. She comes in quarterly, gets labs done. Actually, I think she probably comes in every 6 months, and we check in. Her protocol evolves as her biology evolves. If she's going, she's a hard charger. If she's going through a harder season, she knows already. We've taught her how to tweak things, how to focus on stress management, and she actually is making the meaningful changes, not relying on us. We're here to help, but she has been educated through this process that she's now aware of what things make her feel different, better, worse, all of it. And it's fantastic to see. And so this is really the arc, number 1, assess it. Number 2, address the root cause, optimize, and then maintain. And so, that's why the next decade is the highest leverage decade, because, you can accept that, hey, I'm just going to get older, things are going to break down, and eventually I'm not going to be able to enjoy my health and my life. Or you can take a decision and decide what the next 10 to 20 to 30 years are going to look like. Because the decade between 48 and 62, in my clinical experience and the research literature, that's the highest leverage window for longevity intervention, right? Obviously, if it's now is better than later, right? It's always better to start now, no matter what age you are. I know that, being 34 years old, that now is where I make the decisions for how my future looks. But if you've missed that, right, it's not too late to start. You make a decision now. Here's why. Because this is the window when hormonal shifts, perimenopause, menopause, they're going to start. And those shifts, if not addressed, will set the metabolic and inflammatory trajectory for the next decades to follow. The insulin resistance that develops in this window, the muscle mass that's lost, the bone density that declines, those climbing inflammatory markers, they don't just affect how you feel now or at 55. They're going to determine your health at 70 and 80. This is also the window that intervention is most effective, right? The body's adaptive capacity is still robust right now. These systems we're trying to optimize are still responsive. So the compounding is still working in your favor if you act now. The research on women who optimize during perimenopause and early menopause versus those who don't is actually not subtle. The optimizers have dramatically lower rates of cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, dementia, metabolic disease in their later decades. Not marginally lower, dramatically lower. 50 is not the beginning of decline. 50 is the moment when the decisions you make determine which trajectory you're on for the rest of your life. The women I work with who commit to this in their 50s are extraordinary in their 60s, not because they cheated biology or they hacked it or did something, but because they worked with it. They worked with what their body needed at exactly the right time. Now, the window is open. The question is whether you want to walk through it, whether it matters to you. And that is always the piece that I cannot help someone with, right? What we find is that the term opportunity cost, which we talked about in episode 2, people often don't take something seriously or take action on something, any type of thing, whether buying a car, buying a house, right? Changing their health, unless the cost of change is less than the cost of not changing, right? And so we've covered a lot of ground in these 4 episodes. I want to thank you for staying with me. Hopefully this was helpful for you and impactful. This is the conversation I want most people to be having, not about managing your illness, but about building something exceptional for the future. If you're a new listener and you've just found this and you're thinking about what a first step could look like, I'd invite you to try to schedule a discovery call with us. We'll sit down. It's completely free. We'll hear where you are, what you've tried, maybe what you're looking for. If you have any labs, we can look at those. If you don't, we can get you some. And if it's a fit, if Ascend is the right environment for you and where you want to go, we could talk about what it looks like to work together. No pressure, no obligation, just a conversation. And the link to book is always in our show notes. If you're an existing patient, you've already been on a protocol with us and you're feeling good, or you're one of our physical medicine patients, I want you to think about what the next level looks like, right? Not just the I want to feel better, but the how do I optimize? Many of the optimization tools I discussed today, the advanced hormones, the peptide protocols, the longevity-focused testing, they're available to you if we haven't already incorporated them. So bring up this episode at your next appointment. Let's talk about it, where you are, what building looks like from here, because health is not a destination that you arrive at and then just coast. It's a system you maintain, improve, and build for the rest of your life. And the patients I'm most proud of to work with are not the ones actually who came in sick and got better, although I love those transformations. The ones I love are the ones who came in already, functional, but decided that was not enough. And that's who Ascend is for. That's how we go from here to ascend to a higher level of health. And so, again, I'm Dr. Alessi. Well, thank you again. This is Health Decoded. Thanks for listening. And I will see you on our next episode with a lot more to come.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Decoded, where we break down the truth about all things health and empower you to take charge of your well-being. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. For more resources, personalized support, or to have your questions answered live on the show, visit Ascend Functional Health and head to the contact page to connect with us directly. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your health is in your hands.